Okay, so welcome. Thanks so much for coming. I'm excited to talk about intuitive eating tips and homeopathy support before, during, and after holiday feasts. I thought it might be a nice idea to just have some tips and some things you could do as you prepare for the holiday season. So what is intuitive eating? And there's many ways to describe it, and I'll talk about a few tonight, but it is the personal process of honoring your health by paying attention to the messages of your body and meeting your physical and emotional needs. So it's very personalized, it's very you-centered. You are the expert, because really we do know what feels good in our bodies, how our bodies respond to certain things. So it's really putting you in the driver's seat. And the 10 principles that we'll talk about, kind of do a brief overview tonight, they help you to gain more attunement or awareness of your body to things like biological hunger, also your cues of fullness, and also help you to figure out what might be preventing you or an obstacle to that attunement. So intuitive eating has been around kind of in an official way since 1995. Two nutritionists, Evelyn Tribole and Elyse Resch, wrote the book. And since that time, there's been more than 125 published studies showing its benefit. It is a trending thing on TikTok and Instagram, if you do any of that. So it is something that's it's been around for a long time, and it really is a way of eating that helps you get back to yourself and figuring out and honoring what's best for your body. The general benefits for people who intuitively eat: they have a greater body appreciation and satisfaction, positive emotional functioning, greater life satisfaction, unconditional self-regard and optimism, psychological hardiness, and greater motivation to exercise when the focus is on enjoyment rather than on guilt or appearance. And this was taken from the Intuitive Eating book. Is intuitive eating for everyone? I always say yes, but there are situations where it may be at a later time, it would be better for you. So later would be for people who are underweight, under body weight, bulimic, excessive exercisers, or if they've been admitted to a residential or inpatient treatment center for eating disorders. If you are not in those categories, then it definitely, the long-time dieter, or someone who's really obsessed with eating clean and feels this, real remorse or guilt when they don't, calorie counters, you having like mild body rumination, or that love-hate relationship with the scale. And then I do have a link down here for if you do know someone who suffers from an eating disorder. The National Eating Disorder Association has lots of resources. So I'm going to quickly go through the principles, just kind of, really briefly. If you're new to intuitive eating, the holidays can be a challenging time on their own without bringing in a new skill or trying to eat intuitively. But I think it can offer us some really great opportunities that we may not get at other times of the year. So I wouldn't say if you're new, just forget it, wait till January. But if you're new, maybe consider just thinking about these principles as you're attending different functions and having meals and having enjoying a food with friends, just having these things kind of in the back of your mind. So the first one is rejecting the diet mentality. The second one is to honor your hunger, which I'll talk a little bit more about tonight. Making peace with food, challenging the food police, or those different, they think they're helpful voices, but they're really not. Those critical voices who are analyzing and giving you input about every little thing you're putting into your mouth or not. Discover the satisfaction factor, which is really about really enjoying your food. When someone says, oh, this sounds good, this is what I'm wanting to eat, and then getting to eat that. It's a real satisfaction that, you can't really get in any other way. Well, maybe you can, but I think it's really helpful. Feel your fullness, cope with your emotions with kindness, respect your body, movement, feel the difference, getting to really learn about ways to move your body that feel good, where you're not maybe concerned about burning off so many calories or doing it every day or whatever it is, really having a different relationship with movement or exercise. And then the last one is honor your health with gentle nutrition. So it's kind of pulling all of the principles together at the end to really remember that in the end, we really want to just cultivate our authentic health and have a lifestyle that is healthy and sustainable and something that we're working towards feeling good in our bodies. As I talk about in the intuitive eating workbook study, there are stages of intuitive eating. So if you're new to it, it is a process. And I think everyone starts, at stage 1, that readiness, like, wow, I just want to do something different. Like, I'm sick of diets. I feel like I don't even know what to eat anymore. So this readiness stage is a great place to start. Excuse me, as you learn more, you get to explore some of the principles. And that is an exciting time, exciting stage, but it can also feel like, oh my gosh, just really concentrated on the food, really concentrated on what you can eat and how it feels in your body. Crystallization is where you're really putting all of these principles together in the very beginning stage. It's not like a complete, I got this down. Awakening is, again, just feeling more in tune with a lot of the principles. And then pleasure is where you're like, hey, I enjoy my food. I eat intuitively most of the time, and it's really, a wonderful, wonderful thing. So as we move into the holiday season, we're going to be surrounded by all kinds of foods, whether we're working in offices or going to parties or even just going to the grocery store, right? There's a whole different array of foods around us to choose from, and they're packaged beautifully, and they only come around this time of the year. So there's just so much reason to, want to indulge in different foods. And I think that's, part of the celebration is getting to do that. But I think with the intuitive eating, the mindset is also to really honor your hunger and how do different foods feel in your body. And when you eat those JoJo peppermint cookies or whatever it is that come out I love those, during the holiday season, it's like, well, do you need more than one? Or maybe you need more than one, just really having some awareness and consciousness when you're eating. So I wanted to talk about types of hunger because that'll kind of play a part in how I've suggested getting yourself ready before, during, and after a gathering. So there's biological hunger, which talks about it's time to refuel my physical needs, whether your stomach's grumbling or you feel a little bit, for me, I get a little fuzzy, don't concentrate as well. So that's generally eating at least every 5 hours, ideally every 3 to 4 hours, to avoid overeating. And that's biological hunger. And I'll refer to that throughout the talk. Taste hunger is more the food sounds good or the occasion calls for it, such as eating birthday cake at a birthday party. So with upcoming Thanksgiving, there's all the different foods that come out during that meal. You may be more in taste hunger at different times as you're like, oh, but pumpkin pie, or, oh, I really like Aunt Sally's stuffing, or whatever it is, and you want to enjoy it. And I think it's okay if you want to enjoy it. It's just kind of having a sense of like how much you want to enjoy, and to how to not get to that point of overfull, so that, the next day or later that night, you're having that feeling of like, oh, why did I do that? I don't feel good. My stomach hurts, whatever it is. Emotional hunger could be eating because of emotions such as boredom, anxiety, and fear, or any other emotion. And then practical hunger is eating because of your schedule or activities. So you're going to work late. So you have, you eat differently than you would if you were going home, or you're meeting someone later, so you have a snack before a meal or something like that. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about principle 2, honoring your hunger. This is from, again, the intuitive eating book. Keep your body biologically fed with adequate energy and carbohydrates. Otherwise, you can trigger a primal drive to overeat. And I think this can, I'm gonna actually do one more slide. Another one about honoring your hunger. Once you reach that moment of excessive hunger, all intentions of moderate, conscious eating are fleeting and irrelevant. Learning to honor this first biological signal sets the stage for rebuilding trust with yourself and food. So I know I've heard a lot of times, before Thanksgiving, people will they won't eat anything all day long. They'll wait till the meal. And I understand, that thinking, it's kind of a diet mentality thinking, right? Like you're putting all your calories in one meal. But the idea is that you're really getting yourself overly hungry. So by the time that meal comes, you have really no like off switch. It just feels like you're starving because you kind of are, right? You haven't eaten in probably more than 5 hours if you haven't eaten all day. And it's that idea of I'm just going to save it all up for one meal. And while that's, kind of something that is common, it's not always the greatest move, because again, you may overeat or eat more than you feel, over full, when you could have really had breakfast, maybe had a snack, and then had, the pieces and parts that you wanted for dinner, or even have leftovers, but that idea that when we restrict or prevent ourselves from eating for a long time, it's almost inevitable that we'll eat too much. So I want to talk about before the feast, the self-care, the basics. So looking again at, some of those pieces that help us to feel in balance. So whether it's sleep, making sure we have enough sleep, we're not overly tired, that our life feels balanced, that we're nourished. So again, not really skipping meals, or really looking at the quality of the foods we're eating to make sure that our bodies feel fed. And then looking at our stress management skills. And of course, this is the time of year. I mean, I can sit here and say, oh, and we should all be balanced and have no stress and sleep. But I know reality is it's hectic. Schedules are different. And so it is a challenging time to kind of keep things even keel. But I guess I'm just trying to point out that if you are concerned about overeating or overindulging, you may also want to make some time or energy, put some time and energy into making sure some of these other areas are also your other needs are getting met. There was a study done about chocolate restriction. So there was chocolate was restricted for 3 weeks, and it triggered an increase in the chocolate consumption before and then after the restriction period. And then consequently, restrained eaters do not really end up eating less food overall. Researchers suggest that a high restrained eating score, meaning a high degree of restrained eating, seems to more accurately reflect eating related guilt rather than actual food consumed. So that idea, like I said, of like not eating anything before Thanksgiving meal, and then just, it may go on beyond Thanksgiving, right? You might be like the day after Thanksgiving or into the weekend, whatever it is. Or it's like, well, and some people say, well, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Hanukkah, like those are just the starts of the season of eating. And I understand that. Excuse me, I'm going to have a drink here. I understand that because that's a lot of what's going on with the celebration and around food. And I think that's great, but it's also just that, like, not restricting yourself so that you go crazy in those different situations. And then I wanted to talk about the idea of habituation. This is talked about in the principle number 3. And that idea of these forbidden foods make it very exciting. And I think when we have the holiday season, there are, like I said, foods that kind of come out once a year. So that there might be this idea that it's all going to be new and exciting. And it's a little bit more challenging, I think, to get habituated with pumpkin pie, maybe because it might be something you don't have all the time. But just that idea of knowing you're probably going to be really excited about everything there. Like all the foods are going to feel like, ooh, I want some of that. I want some of that. I want some of that. And that's totally normal and totally natural. And I think if you're really listening to your biological hunger, even maybe starting now, right, before Thanksgiving week, starting to really notice, I want to feed my body. I want to feel satisfied in what I'm eating, so that when Thanksgiving comes, you can really enjoy it and not feel really revved up about the food. Be more, that it's just like, oh yeah, and this is a really happy day, or a time of coming together, celebrating with family, whatever it is. But to know that it's probably going to feel, those forbidden foods may feel pretty exciting, and you probably won't have the time to habituate into those foods. But with intuitive eating over time, even the exciting foods are just like, oh, that was nice. That I had enough of whatever it was. So here's some ideas about before the gathering. Making sure you're not too hungry. And I know that feels weird sometimes, like I've shared in my intuitive eating classes, that sometimes I'll have a snack before dinner because I'm making dinner for everybody. I'm doing a lot of things. And when I have that snack, I end up eating less at dinner, and I'm also just more pleasant to be around. And making the dinner isn't like I have energy. So making sure you're not too hungry. Again, not skipping breakfast, not skipping lunch. Maybe you don't have your normal biggest meals of the day, but just knowing like restricting or trying to save all your calories really isn't going to help in the long run. And then keeping the end in mind. So say we take Thanksgiving, for example. How do you want to feel Thanksgiving night, or how do you want to feel Friday? Or do you want to feel like, oh man, I wish I wouldn't have that, or whatever it is? Or do you want to feel like, wow, I really enjoyed the company and the food was delicious and I really honored my hunger and listened to my fullness cues? And again, it's not like you have to do it perfect, but if you can imagine how you want to feel when it's all done, that can kind of sometimes help me to like, oh yeah, I want to feel this way. Being realistic. So if you're new to intuitive eating, not expecting yourself to like have it all figured out and to do it perfectly, but rather be realistic. Like again, just having an awareness of, oh, wow, I feel full and I still want to finish this pumpkin pie or whatever it is. And that's okay. So being realistic of what you think you can and cannot do in the situation. Being compassionate with yourself, as you're trying something new, just being compassionate and kind to yourself. Tuning into what are you feeling, sometimes that can help. And I'll talk about a few Bach flower remedies as well as cell salts and homeopathic remedies that you can have on hand if you're feeling anxious or nervous or worried or whatever it is. And then using it as an opportunity for practice. Like I mentioned before, a lot of us eat at home, or we may eat out with one person, or we eat at work. We don't have the opportunity to practice intuitive eating in a group or at a social thing or at a big holiday meal. So seeing this as like, oh, I wonder how this is going to go, and being excited about the opportunity. During the gathering, here's some ideas. Be present with yourself and others. Take a break. So if it gets to feel too much, maybe step out, go to the bathroom, or just maybe move somewhere else, go to a different group of people, whatever it is, but just to like notice that you're either really focused on the food or you're having a hard time. Maybe you're not feeling, maybe you're having like things going on with your body, like you're having some body image issues or whatever it is, just giving yourself a break. And what I've noticed too for me is when I'm thinking about the food, I'm usually hungry. So when I'm like, I want, it's usually a signal for me that I'm actually not, I'm biologically hungry. Not always, maybe on Thanksgiving, because we might be obsessing about the whipped cream on the pumpkin pie, but sometimes that'll be a cue for me. See if you can help out. So sometimes getting out of ourselves, seeing where we can be of service to the host, or, playing with the kids that are there, or just doing something different that takes the focus away from the food. And then there's this really beautiful phrase when I was taking the intuitive eating certification classes that Evelyn said when someone made a comment about, oh, are you working off your last night's dessert or something? It was just some comment from somebody, I think at the gym. And she just said, oh, I don't see food that way. And I just thought it was such a like beautiful way, like a very, plain statement of, oh, I just don't see food that way. And it really can just like, oh, like, I mean, what are you going to say? What can someone say to that? Or, I mean, I'm sure people could say things, but it just maybe having this phrase in your mind that you want to say if someone makes a comment about your meal, or again, just something so you can feel supported. Remember, there are other things to talk about. If it gets too food heavy, or I'm talking about, oh, I'm going to go on a diet tomorrow, or, oh, this or that, there's other things you can talk about. And then focusing on the connection with others, you know, who else is there, what else is going on besides the table. Okay. And then after the gathering, having compassion for yourself, regardless of however it turned out. One meal does not make or break your health. Moving on, letting it go, you know, not replaying it, not thinking, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, just being like, okay, new day. What are we focusing on today? Stay the course. So not restricting or doing more exercise to make up for eating. Pay attention to your hunger cues the next day. So one thing I've noticed when I eat more in one meal than I normally do, the next day I'm not as hungry, or sometimes I'm just the same hungry as normal. It's all fine, but just paying attention, you know, like if you're not as hungry at your breakfast or lunch, you know, maybe because, you know, you had more food the day before. And then reframing your thoughts, you know, really looking at, you know, why am I feeling bad? Or, you know, instead of replaying it, just reframing it to feel more positive about it. There's a really nice phrase in the intuitive eating workbook about, for the most part, you know, for the most part, I really honor my hunger. For the most part, I pay attention to, you know, when I'm full. For the most part, I walk away satisfied from my meals, whatever it might be. But to know, like, in general, I think most of us do a great job, you know, for the most part, taking care of our bodies and our health. So some ideas for support, and these are Bach flower remedies, and Serato, chestnut bud, and crab apple are a few that I suggest here. Serato can really help strengthen the inner voice, which makes it easier to trust our own decisions. So I thought this might be helpful if you're going to a family gathering where there's going to be lots of food, a holiday party, whatever it is. Just, you know, giving your inner intuition a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a support as you're navigating these parties. Chestnut bud is great when you're trying to learn from your past mistakes. So the positive chestnut bud personality observes his or her own mistakes with objectivity and learns from every experience, gaining knowledge and wisdom so as to move forward in life. So again, not like, oh, why did I do that? Oh, I never learned, but really just, hey, okay, I'm really new at this. I'm really excited to become better at this. Chestnut bud can help with those sort of thoughts. Crab apple can help with poor self-image. The positive potential of crab apple is acceptance of oneself and one's imperfections. So again, if body image stuff is coming up for you, you may want to consider having crab apple, and I'll talk about dosing in a second. And then I suggested 3 others: elm, larch, and mimulus. And these are more to help with confidence. So elm is a Bach flower well suited for those who feel overwhelmed by their workload, have momentarily lose confidence. This overwhelm may make them have a temporary loss of self-esteem, even doubt their own abilities. So the idea is maybe it's not work that's overloading, but just the holiday season and everything that's going on. If you're in a state of overwhelm elm can help to support you with that. Larch is one I really like. It's well suited for lack of self-confidence, for people who won't even try because they are sure in advance that they will fail, and they're avoiding the risk of failure. So after taking larch, you may feel more confident. You may not be as hesitant to try things or to try new things. And then mimulus is for fear from known causes. So maybe going to parties makes you a little anxious. Maybe you're not like the greatest small talk person like myself. So mimulus may be a nice support in helping to socialize a little better. People needing this flower essence may be shy and retiring, can be tongue-tied in company. So this may help to help you to feel a little more confident when you're socializing with other people. And then dosing, so you can add 4 drops of each flower essence in your beverage or food. You can also diffuse them or add drops to your wrist. And typically when I make up a blend for someone, I use up to 7 different flowers. So I listed 6 here. So obviously, if you want to invest in all 6, you could do all 6 in a bottle, 4 drops of each, in like a little dropper bottle thing. And then you can use that and put that in your water or food. And I also wanted to share some homeopathic remedies that can be helpful, especially if you're anxious. This is arsenicum album. Gets anxious when things are chaotic or out of order, thrives with routine and structure, wants to be fully prepared, wants company around them when they're anxious, detail-oriented, can be very particular about their food choices and worry if things aren't healthy. So maybe going to a party, if this remedy is indicated for you, might be really stressful because parties can be chaotic, and maybe unless you're hosting it, and then that could be chaotic too. But just that feeling of going into someone else's home and what's the food going to be and what's this going to, and is there going to be a lot of noise and all the things. So if that sounds familiar to you or someone like that, arsenicum album may be supportive. And then the other one is Nux vomica. Very impatient, especially when others slow down their productivity, highly irritable and ambitious. They may overwork or overindulge in alcohol or drugs to deal with their feelings, more of a type A personality. And they can't sleep after too much rich food or alcohol. So I also put this one in here because if you do feel like you've overindulged, Nux vomica can be a nice remedy to have just to kind of help to support your digestion and help you get to sleep that night. Speaking of sleep, I added a few remedies here to help with sleep. So arsenicum album, again, it's a remedy when you can't sleep because of a worry or anxiety and feel like you will never fall asleep. Restless and worse from midnight to 2 a.m. Coffea cruda is when you are wide awake at 3 a.m. with tons of thoughts. You feel overstimulated and hypersensitive and excited. You may feel agitated and restless. So Coffea cruda is made from coffee, and it can have that feeling of like having had too much coffee, even though you haven't. So just a little jittery, a little hyper, and then, you're trying to sleep and you're like, I'm wide awake. And then magnesium muriaticum is indicated when you can't sleep because of anxiety, which happens mostly at night in bed. So you might, go through your whole day, and then as soon as you lay down to go to sleep, it's like, ding, everything you've been worried about comes rushing in. Sleep is restless and disturbed, and you feel worse in the morning. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about cell salts for support. So cell salts are a little bit different than homeopathic remedies and then Bach flowers, but they work more on the cells of the body. Caliphos cell salt number 6 is the main one to soothe the nerves. It's helpful for sleep or calming the nerves when feeling overworked or overwhelmed. It's also indicated for dullness and lack of energy. Nat Phos number 10 is one to consider for acidity. So maybe you've had a little too much stuffing and cranberry sauce or whatever it is. It's helpful for a sour stomach or acid indigestion from foods such as milk, fat, or sweets. It's also indicated for nausea or diarrhea from acid foods. And then lastly, Calc Phos is great for anxiety about the future, or maybe if you're even feeling a little bit down. It can help when there's a lot of mental or physical exhaustion after long periods of work or study. And then I always love kind of having quotes about different things that I'm teaching about. So I want to talk about self-compassion. Here's a quote from Christopher Germer. Self-compassion is simply giving the same kindness to ourselves that we would give to others, which is a great reminder. And then I have my contact information here. Here's the resource page. And then I am offering the intuitive eating workbook study again in January. It's a 12-week study, and we go through the workbook together, going through each principle in depth, and you kind of get a really good idea of how to understand the principles and how to start applying them to your lives. So if you want to register before the 31st, it's $300. So those are some deals that are going on now. So thanks again for coming, and happy holiday feasts, whatever those may bring. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. I'd love to chat. Thanks.